Hi, this is James Cook of the University of Maine at Augusta in the Social Science program, and I'm recording this video to talk about the idea of analyzing social media, taking social media as it is, and taking it apart into its constituent parts, which are individuals, relations, affiliations, and then the meaning of the content itself. And then understanding how not just each of those pieces exists, but how they fit together. How can we do that when we actually go to a live social media platform? To kind of talk our way through that, I've headed over to reddit.com and looked at Reddit, which is a discussion board based social media platform organized by subject, and looked for subreddit, which is indicated by the /r after reddit.com in the URL. And then I wanted to look at a somewhat innocuous subreddit, which is a discussion board called introverts. So I typed in reddit.com/r/introverts. It is, as you can see here, a community of introverts. And what one could do is start to just look here. Now, you notice I'm not even logged into Reddit. So you don't have to be logged into Reddit to read it. You'll notice a few things that the users denoted by u/ and then some text are pretty much all pseudonyms, and this is public facing material. Anyone can see it, so there's not an ethical hiccup of working with private data. This is public data where people are publicly talking about their experience with being introverted. We could scroll through and we could pick a topic like nobody listens to me. That's the subject matter. And we could load that up, and we could read through the main post, and then we could start to read through the comments that people post. This is a conversation. Notice people communicate back and forth. There are some conventions here. Notice that when NinGen333 posts that the original poster, Books and Cats 1216, you notice right, they're listed up here at the top as the original poster, responds. And you can even tell that it's the original poster because there's a blue OP text that occurs next to it. So this is great. You could sit here and you could treat this as a text, and you could look for descriptions of relationships, of attributes, adjectives, affiliations, all sorts of things that might possibly happen, and keep reading and keep reading and keep reading, and that would be fine. And then you could have a spreadsheet program open in another tab on your computer, and you could start to type in data that's indicating, okay, who's the user that's been responding, and what do they say, and you could copy and paste the text. Look, I can select it and I can copy it. I could paste it into a spreadsheet. I could note little things like what's the net number of upvotes here. Lord of Entropy has a net upvote of 4, which means that maybe there are 5 people who voted them up and 1 person who voted them down. 5 minus 1 is 4. I could go ahead and do that, and I could even create a data set that way. However, while there's a positive aspect to that, which is that anyone can access this. Anyone who knows how to cut and paste material could do that. But the downside is that, well, first of all, it's a slow process to do so. It would take quite a bit of time. And while that's even happening, the discussion board is changing. And so while you're copying and pasting, maybe people will continue to be posting. And so it's nice to be able to get it all quickly at once, number one. And number two, to have it all stored and ready to go. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to do that? Well, we certainly could do that. And one nice way to do that would be to go to the bones of Reddit at reddit.com and to go right into their database of materials and copy it directly. But we don't have access to that. And the reason we don't have access to that is that if we did have access to it, Reddit is concerned that we would do all sorts of things with it. It turns out that there are ways to get access to that database and to get some information from it, but that's also complicated. What I want to show you now is what it actually sort of looks like on the backside. And I want to go to a different social media piece of software, one that allows you to create your own social media platform. It's called WordPress, which is, it allows you to publish a blog, but it allows you to do so with multiple users and one in which anybody can comment who's a visitor, and you can have your own discussions just like happen here on Reddit. I'm going to switch over to this web page here, which is showing MySQL. Okay, so MySQL, MySQL, is a language in PHP, and it is PHP is a text processor that allows you to run commands that generate text, that generate tables, and tables that relate to each other. And this is really complicated looking because social media is a little complicated. But I want you to notice a few things here. Okay, first, if we take a look at this main area, you'll notice there are prefixes for first WP and then underscore. That means this is a WordPress, okay, file. And then there's TKJV, which is the name of the blog database that I set up for this example. And then there's another underscore, which means, wait, there's more. And the third part is something that's different in each part. So the first part in this hypothetical example is users. And if I click there, it's going to have just one row because there's just one user, and that's me. My name is James Cook. And I registered for this sample WordPress blog to be able to exhibit it way back in 2016. But if we head back to the main area, you'll notice that I have that user, right? And that user is user number 1. And that user then can be referenced in another database. And this is going to look more like a classic database structure when we browse through it. Okay, I used this to create a sample criminology course. Okay, and let's take a moment to just absorb the structure of this, because this kind of database online is not exactly the same as what Reddit or Facebook or Twitter will use, but it's essentially the same. The idea is the same. And for WordPress, this is really what it will look like. The first is that you'll notice that for these posts, right, this is WP TKJV posts, I'm going to have a unique ID for each post. It's going to tell me who the author is. And because this is a single author blog, the post author is always going to be one. That's me. It's going to tell me when it was posted on the date and the time. That's a date timestamp. And then it's going to have a title. And then there's going to be content. So there's a post status, which indicates that it was indeed published. And there's some more descriptions here. If there was a modification, it'll tell me when, and it will tell you where to find this information, right? Each of the columns is showing a variable that is of interest to the computer or occasionally to you and as a reader. And it's nice and succinctly organized, right? So the columns are variables and the rows are different cases. So each of these rows is a different post on this blog. So then there's all kinds of other information that's available here. I could look at comments and we could, look at the structure of that. I don't want to show you the actual comments here too quickly, just because we don't want to expose individuals, but here's the structure of the comment table, right? Each of these is a variable. They're going to be different kinds of variables. Some of them are integers, small integers, int, big integers, big int, little bits of text that are not too long, and they can save it. And then there's varchar, which is a variable characters, and the number afterward is saying how many characters can fit within there. And then there's the comment content, which is just listed as text, which means there's a lot of words that can fit in there. And each of these is a variable in its own table. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just go and we could get information about who posted when, and we get it in a series of tables that would describe all this behavior in real live social media forms? Well, we can't, because we don't have access to the innards of Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, all these other places that publish websites that are containing social media content. And that's for the user's protection, and also so that people don't copy the corporate model, lots of other reasons, so they don't get hacked. But the nice thing is that many social media platforms do use a very limited but useful way to access data, and it is called an API. API stands for Application Programming Interface. So the application is the program that's on the line, and then you're over here and you're writing a little computer program that is trying to get the information or request it, and then there's an interface, and the interface is what's called the API. And what you do is to make a request. You use the internet to make a request. You essentially type something in the address bar, and you'll get a result. Let me show you an example of this that's really simple, and it's actually set up by these folks. It's called CatFact, and it's set up to be very, very simple. So if you type in catfact.ninja/fact, you'll get a random fact. Like, for instance, a cat's brain is more similar to a man's brain than to that of a dog. Okay, so you can read that text, but notice that this is not in the form of a data set. There are a couple of squiggles at either end, and then there's things in quotes, and then there are things that are not in quotes, and then there are colons and commas. What is going on here? This is in a format called JSON, which is spelled actually JSON. And JSON is something that is different than a data set, right? Because say Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, all these social media platforms, they don't want you to have access to the core data, but they would like you to have access to the information on it, number one. Number two, databases are really clunky to transmit over the internet because they're in tabular format, and so things in tabular format tend to have larger file sizes. They tend to be clunky for that reason. So someone somewhere along the line thought up, hey, why don't we just create a text version of what a database would be? And this is a really simple version of it, okay? And it's in a format called JSON. Here, you'll notice that there are two kinds of information. Okay, first of all, there's words, and to note words, they put it in quotes. That means this is in word. This is words here. These are characters, text characters, to use computer language. Okay, and then there's numbers like 66. Okay, and also notice that there's commas and colons. So the colons are connecting a variable name, which is like fact, which is basically saying the name of this variable is fact, and then there's the content of the variable, which is, in this case, a cat's brain is more similar to a man's brain than that of a dog. Okay. Then notice there's a comma after that pair of the variable name, fact, and then the fact itself, the content of fact. Here you have the variable name length, and then the content of the variable length, which is not a character, it's a number, 66. And I bet my boots that if we counted every character, including every space in there and every period and apostrophe, that we would get to 66. So it's just telling us that the length of this is 66 characters. That's wonderful. Now you notice, right, this is a longer fact. I just loaded it again. I got another fact. That's lovely. All cats need taurine in their diet to avoid blindness. I had no idea. And cats almost have fat in their diet because they can't produce it on their own. Who knew? And the length of this fact is 140 characters. So what could be simpler? Why don't we just work with this information? Well, hypothetically, you could go, if we wanted to know about introverts, we could go to reddit.com/r/introverts, the same places we did before, and we could add a little bit of extra text onto the web address, an additional slash, a backslash, and then top.json, which means let's get the top posts. And then there's a question mark, which means, well, here are some options for getting this JSON formatted information. First of all, let's limit it to 100 posts. And second, let's do it within the time frame of the most recent month. You could also do within the time frame of the most recent day by t equals day. Those are some options, but look at what you get. Oh my, wow. All of a sudden, when we move from a simple cat fact to what looks really simple on a web page, which is a set of posts, right? This looks nice and simple here. That, the most recent top posts over here in JSON, I don't know about you, but I find it, frankly, illegible. I can start to look at some parts of it. For instance, if we notice JSON starts with a little squiggle, and at the end, it will end with a little squiggle, so that's the same. And we have the same pairing of, so for instance, this is the kind of piece of data. It's kind because it's in words, is in quotes, and then there's a colon, and then it says it's the kind that is listing. But after that, it's a little like drinking from a fire hose. It's confusing and long, and I'm sure if I spent months looking at this page, it might start to be comprehensible to me. But right now, it's just absolutely overwhelming. I mean, I can pick out little bits that I understand, like the subreddit here that I'm highlighting is the subreddit introverts, but the rest of it is really just a headache. It's difficult to read. And by the way, it goes on and on and on and on. This JSON format is not really designed for people to read. It's designed for computers to read. And in order for us to start to understand as people and that are not technological computers, what's going on, we need to convert it back into a database format. So how could we do that hypothetically? Well, we could go to R. If you're in my class for analyzing social media, at this point, you've already written a very short program in R, one that is based in just saying hello. We're going to have a few complications here. Okay, the first is that there are libraries that are added on here. Okay, we're going to start with that Cat Ninja JSON file, JSON, and we're going to convert it to a database. And we're going to do so using packages, which are these little add-on bits of code that have been vetted by R and the people who run R, so we know they're safe. And and then we're going to use the commands that are in those packages, also called libraries, okay? And that's the part that I've highlighted here. In order to use a package in R, the first thing you need to do is install it. So notice that we have two packages here, also called libraries, HTTR and one called JSON Lite, which is a package that is all about translating JSON into other formats that you can actually read as a human being. So let's take a look at that. Let's go to Tools, and a way to always install packages is to head to Tools in RStudio, to click it, and then you can type in HTTR and look for it. Okay, and if it's not in that repository right there, it should be popping up. Oh, there it is, HTTR, there it is. Okay, so you then select it. There's a little click box which says install dependencies. Sometimes one package in order to run needs another package behind it. So it's usually good practice to click yes, install dependencies, and then we can click install. And it says, oh boy, I should restart R to do that. And so fine, I'll do that. We'll restart R. It'll take just a moment. And then you'll see down in the lower left, in the console window, it's restarted the R session. And now it's installing the packages HTTR. So that was simple, right? And then it gives me a little bit of a message. It says it's installing the package. There we go. And now I'm going to head over and I'm going to install. Oh, it's successfully unpacked and sums have been checked, which basically means that there hasn't been any data lost in the package. And I'm going to head over to Tools and install packages again. And now I'm going to look for one called JSON Lite, JSON, L-I-T. There it is. And I'm going to select it and then click install. Now, while it's installing, okay, you'll notice a little stop sign in the upper right-hand corner of the console window. That means something's running, so you need to wait to cool your heels. It won't take very long. It's telling us that it's installing, it's downloading it, and it's successfully unpacked with MD5 sums checked, which means that it looks like it came through well. Great, now we have taken these packages and we just need to activate them. And that's easy. You just use the library command. Now you'll notice that there's the command library, which means we're going to use this package. I don't know why the command isn't called package, but it's called library, so we'll just live with it. It's just something you have to remember. Notice when I start to type it, command library, it's going to tell me all kinds of options here in this pop-up window for the command library. But the most simple version of it is that it's telling me that I'm going to have options, things that I could write in there, okay? And notice that all those options are inside parentheses. In R, the options for any command are listed in parentheses. So I'm going to do the simplest option, which is just the first option, which is just to name the package. Notice that that's the first option that's listed there. So I'm going to literally type in a parenthesis and then HTTR, right? And I already did that, but I'm showing you the typing of it. When I type that, what it is doing is it's saying, run the library command and do it with the option of the package HTTR, which means load the package HTTR and get it ready to use. That's what the first line is. Notice that over on the left with the script, there are line numbers. That's great. So we can always reference what line number is going on where if things go wrong. Okay, and then once we have HTTR and JSON Lite, these packages loaded, we can use their commands. And here is one command, the command get, okay? Now, we're gonna want to get, oh, and look, there's a parenthesis. What are we gonna wanna get? We're going to wanna get the API, https://catfact.ninja/fact, which is exactly what we read a moment ago in a web browser. We're gonna use the command get to get it. And then we're going to save the results in a variable called cat API. Okay, I'm going to clear the console so that, okay, everything's clear there. By the way, you can do that with Control L if you click on the console window. Okay, so now we're going to get cat API, and then it will show it to us, right? If we just type cat API, the name of this variable, it will just show us the result. And that will be in JSON format. But we want to take an API and convert it to a regular database format. Okay, so we want a cat dataset in short. And so I'm creating a variable that's named cat dataset. And what is it going to be equal to? It is going to be equal to the command take this from JSON. It's a command called from JSON. It's going to convert any weird characters, special characters, these things that are sometimes in text files, to regular plain old characters, like just numbers and letters and punctuation and things like that. So the option for from JSON is, first of all, to convert anything raw and difficult to regular characters. And then what are we going to convert? Oh, we're going to convert cat API, and we're going to convert the content of it, okay? So what this means, cat API, take that detail and let's grab the content from it. And then we will have on our computer a data set that takes the information from the cat API. Let's run it and see what happens, okay? So to do that, I'm going to go to code, and I'm going to go to run region, and I'm going to run all, that is to run all the lines. I could, there's some other options for running, to run just a line or two, or to select a bit, and then, run that section, all that. But we're going to just run everything, okay? And notice there's a stop sign here in the console window, which tells us something's running. Just chill, okay? Okay, and now the stop sign's gone. So it's showing us in the console window that it ran through the commands, okay? So it ran through the commands of starting up with the packages, and there's no error messages, which would appear in red if there were. And then it says, okay, let's run this next thing. Get it. And then, oh, and this is there because if you put a hashtag in front of words, it's just a comment to remind you of what the command above it is for. So it's just reproducing that comment. And then when we type in cat API as a comment, or excuse me, as a command, here's the response we get. Okay, so the response to this is with the get command that we get something called date, status, and content, okay, and size. We get 4 variables. And the content, it tells you what type it is, right? So actually, we can look at that by heading over to the upper right-hand corner where our saved information, all the data, including variables, are listed. So if I simply click on cat API, it's going to show it to me. Look at that. Oh, wow. Okay. So it's got all that information on date. It's got whether there are cookies. It's got the times, the request. But here it's got content. Okay. And that information is then going to be grabbed by the command here, cat dataset equals from JSON, convert it from any raw data to characters. And what are we converting? We're converting something from the dataset cat API, and we'd like the content, please. We'd like this bit. Okay, so once we've done that, let me close this data set. The result was going to be called cat dataset. Oh, look, it is over there. So I'm going to click on that. Let's see what happened. Okay. Oh, and look at that. Here's a data set with 2 pieces of information in it. Okay. The first is that cats have muscles that control the outer ear. Humans have only 6. And the second is the length. That it's a length of 122 characters. And now we have a data set that is much better organized for us systematically than before. So I showed you that we were able to load up on a website a very simple version of the Reddit API for the subreddit introverts. So couldn't we just run something very similar where we're no longer calling it here's another R script. Each of these is in a different tab. But in this tab, let me save it so it's the same color. It's red when it hasn't been saved, so it's reminding you to save it. That's handy in RStudio. We've got the same commands up here, and we've got the same basic commands for JSON-Lite, except that now we're not calling it cat API, we're calling it Reddit API. And let's try to limit the results to just 5, because we want this to be extra small and a nice tidy example, right? And then we're going to convert Reddit API, and let's see how it works. So we're going to go to run region, run all. There we go. Okay, so that's nice. Hey, we were able to get Reddit API and Reddit dataset. So you could do that. It has the same kinds of features here. It has content, it has date, and all those things. And then let's take a look at the data set itself. Oh no, look what happened. The data set itself is showing us a problem. The message is too many requests. And the error is a 429 error called too many requests. What's going on here? We really thought we had something going on, but we don't, unfortunately. And the reason that we don't is that Reddit, unfortunately, well, from our point of view, but fortunately from their point of view, tries to keep their website functional by keeping people from just going in and grabbing the raw API too much and then doing funny things with it. Because the worry is that then there will be people like you and me. Any one person doing it won't slow the website down, but 40,000 people doing it will really slow things down. So this simple way of converting an API just unfortunately isn't going to work. What could we do instead? Well, one thing we could do, I'm showing you then a third script, is that we could use another package, one that someone has written specifically for working with the Reddit API, grabbing some data, and then converting it using some commands into data sets that we can actually read. And this package for Reddit is called Reddit Extractor, and it's been written by Ivan Garza, who's a guy who decided to do this. And then what we're going to do is, after we make sure that you install Reddit Extractor, so you would type that here, and look, it's in the list. Right? And so after you install that, then we're going to create, we want to get two kinds of pieces of information in the Reddit package. The first is to get the threads. And the threads are simply the names of the posts and their URLs. So to do that, you use the command find thread URLs. And here I'm using an arrow, but it's the same as an equal sign. I could use both. And introverts, let's call this 2/21/23, because now it's February 21st, 2023, not the 20th. I'm going to run the command find thread URLs. And there are a few options. The first is the subreddit. Well, let's make the subreddit that we're going to grab it from introverts. Great, that's easy. If we want to sort it from the top to the bottom, you could sort it by top, which is like the most popular. You could sort it by new, from newest to oldest. So we're sorting it using the option sort by new. And for what period? Oh, as much as you can give us. But Reddit, the API, you typically only go back about a month, sometimes about 3 weeks, depending on how much volume there is of posting on a subreddit. And then we want to get the thread content for each of these thread URLs. And we'll grab the content out from there. And let me show you what it looks like. We're going to run code, go to a region, and run all. So the forest for the trees, while we're waiting on this, you notice that it's running down in the console window, and it takes a little bit of time to do so. The forest for the trees of what we're doing here is something very similar to what you would do if you had text on a page, which is first to get it, and then to go through and look for patterns in it. There's certain pieces of the patterns that are identified by that JSON stream. Remember how there was the name of the variable and in quotes, and then a colon, and then the content of the variable? Well, Reddit makes that available to you. So there's one for the title of the post. There's one for the author of the main post. There's one for the date that it was posted. There's one for the number of upvotes and downvotes, right? There's one for the actual content of it. There is a variable that reminds you what subreddit this was on. All these sorts of things are variables that would go in columns. And the nice thing that's happening right now is that having grabbed all the URLs for the most recently available posts, it is now going and it's grabbing, after having gotten the URL reference, it's grabbing the actual data for it. And once it's finished with that, what we're actually going to get is something that, first of all, it takes about an hour to run, so I'm not going to show you that today. But I'm going to go over here to a different script that is doing the same information work, but it's doing it for two subreddits. First of all, for the subreddit extroverts, and then for the subreddit introverts. Yes, there are two subreddits, and they're about extroverts and introverts. And I went through and I collected all of that information. Then what I did was to say, oh, I want to write this out. I want to save it, each of these, as a CSV file. And I went out and I got data from it. And as you can see, today's the 21st of February. I did that on the 20th of February. And that information is made now available. I saved it to my social media folder on my computers. And you can see information about, well, there's all kinds of things. I do some other research as well. But let's take a look at the introverts and extroverts data for the 20th of 2023 of February. And I can actually load that now into a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. And if we expand each of these out to their proper width so that all the data is visible, you notice that it's got the classic form of a data set. All this stuff that was in a JSON file that was really complicated is now in a data set where it's all organized. The first thing it shows is, it shows me the URL. This is just the basic threads information, right? And it shows me the web page that I could go to look this thing up, which is great, because if I want to go check on it, I can. It tells me when the post was made, which was May 19th, 2021. It tells me the title. The first title in row 2 is job search, and the second title for the second post is why does my quietness bother people so much? Very much introverted. And then there's the text of it. So the text is saved for us, and it's organized in a particular place. It tells us what the subreddit is. It gives us the score, which is the number of upvotes versus downvotes. Hint, a lot of more people use upvotes than use downvotes. And it tells us the number of comments. Oh, wow. So we could go over and using one of these URLs, go and then read the comments, or we could, using that program and just a few commands, we could now look at a data set of all the comments. So let's take a look at those, and we'll load those up into Microsoft Excel. Now it's going to start to look pretty much the same, but then it's going to have some differences. So I'm going to make these nice and big. Okay, good. So you notice here that the URL for the main post is sometimes repeated. Why is it there 5 times? Because for job search, and then why is it many more than 5 times for why does my quietness bother people so much? Because there were 5 comments when I grabbed the data for the comment for the main post job search, and there were many more than 5 of those, I think in the 20s, for why does my quietness bother people so much? Okay, so here's the author of the comment, right? And it gives you the name, the date of the comment, and the score. Yes, because you can upvote and downvote comments as well. And there's the subject. There's the comment itself. Okay. Interesting, right? And then there's something about structure here, right? Which we'll talk about in a later class. But the you can read through the comments as well. So in these 2 databases, which are very much like what we saw in online with WordPress, right? These databases that relate to each other, that are we are allowed to cross-reference one another by the URL, which is for the main post. We know then how that connects to what was here in describing the main post, job search, and why does my quietness bother people so much? All these characteristics, including the number of comments, right? 5 and 26. We can then head right back over to this other data set, and we can find 5 comments here. And wow, I really hope this is going to be 26. It is, right? It got 26 of those. Great. So we're all set there, and we've got lots of information. We can now be free to treat these each as variables. Each of these variables about the comments, variables about the posts, and we can begin to analyze them. And to analyze those Reddit elements, or you could do the same for Twitter, although that's about to change. You could do that for many other social media platforms. The nice thing that you have here is the ability to think about how different variables relate to one another. So for instance, we could note the number of comments. There are 5 comments here for job search, right? Does the number of comments affect the score? I notice that there's some higher scores here where there are a lot of people commenting. Is that a relationship that exists? We could also try to figure out if there are 5 comments here, right? Here's the text of the comments. Does the score that a comment gets end up being related to the positivity or negativity of the comment, whether it's a supporting comment or a criticism? Those are questions that we can begin to ask. That has to do with research, and research allows us to answer questions. But in order to answer the questions, we have to organize our data first. And that's why we have to work with computer programs a little bit in order to get that data fairly quickly. Over here in R, the computer program's still running, but within the space of about 40 minutes, it's going to have data for, well, let's find out how many lines of data do we have, was I able to get with these same commands just yesterday. 20,796 comments. What about the number of posts? 969 posts. That volume of data that you're able to grab in order to do a really large analysis relatively quickly within the space of an hour using only a very small bit of code is actually really quite cool. And that is the core of the advantage of using a computer program like R and RStudio in order to automate the process of getting data, to then understand what you're looking at and to look for themes, to do qualitative or quantitative analysis, and to increase the understanding of how social media works in the world and what the patterns are in that social media world.